Hey guys, welcome back to the First Methodist Shreveport podcast. I'm here with Mandy Storer. Most of
Hi.
you will recognize her as the director of First Beginnings.
Yes.
How are you,
Yes.
Mandy?
I'm good. I'm happy
Good.
to be here today.
We're happy to have you here. This is a time where we have finished up going over local missions and meeting a bunch of people within our community that the church partners with. And now I feel like it's time to look behind the scenes of our church to see who runs things here. So we're starting with, I think we had Michelle before, but now Mandy is on stage.
All right. So I'll tell the story about how I got here.
Okay.
And it is a long story, so
All right.
sorry. And
I'm excited to hear it. Like we've talked before, I've heard bits and pieces of how you got here, and it's all impressive. And so I can't wait to see how this all came together.
by trade, I'm a pharmacist. So I taught pharmacy school for 10 years. It's a lot of school. And I thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. I loved teaching pharmacy school. I loved teaching. I loved the atmosphere. I worked at ULM, and then I worked. It's now Ochsner, but it was LSU, and then it's gone through a few different names. And I was a nephrology pharmacist, so kind of like a dosing consultant for bad kidneys. And I loved my job, and I loved teaching it. And then I had children and still loved my job. But when my son Asher, who is now 11, was 3, he started a typical pre-K or 3-year-old class. And he was my first, so I didn't have anything to compare to. Realized quickly that he was not going to have much success in a typical educational setting. He started pushing children, no verbal skills were developing. We had early steps come in, we had OT, we had speech, we had all the things coming into the house, and trying to stay on top of his education and the tools that he needed. But the school, and I'm very thankful for the school, was very clear with me in that he was going to need a little help. And so we were very fortunate in that Evangel Christian Academy came and observed him. And I was so shocked when I heard that he was pushing children, because he is such a gentle soul. And when they came and observed him, they were like, "Oh, he's learned that if he pushes a child, he gets to go in timeout, and then he doesn't have to speak in circle time, and so it's just escape and avoidance behavior."
Yeah.
So I thought it was genius, and it's still Jesus. It is only Jesus, because they have waiting lists a mile long to get in their program. But Asher was able to get into the Evangel Foundations program. So we started our journey there, and he is still there, and he's doing great and thriving. And it was about then where I received the first little knock on my heart, like, "Mandy, you need to get involved in special needs education."
Because at this time you're still
teaching pharmacy
okay.
school.
Okay.
Yes.
Nice.
And loving it. And so the first little conviction that I had, I prayed, and I had my Jesus moment is what I called it. And it was pretty clear. It's one of those, I get full body chills when it's a Holy Spirit thing. And so I got the full body chills, and it felt like a Jesus moment. And so I approached my husband, who's very practical. And I said, "Aaron, I think I'm supposed to work in special needs education. I'm supposed to provide opportunities." And he was like, "Oh, really? You just finished basically 20 years of school and postgraduate studies, and you love your job, and you think like this one moment you're supposed to leave and get into special needs education." And I thought, well, you have a point. And so that was 8 years ago now. And in comes my second child, Abram. And in the Evangel Foundations program, they'll come into your house and help you learn skills to just whatever tools your child needs. So they were in there, and they started noticing some peculiarities or some things with Abram, totally different than Asher. But turns out Abram needed some help too. Totally different parts of the spectrum, I would say.
Yeah.
But And so I didn't put it together that they were both not going to be able to go into a traditional educational setting. So when they started pointing out some things about Abram, just in the home visits with Asher, again, of course, I was praying over it and just wanting to be the mom that they needed to just to make them successful children. And I knew that, I mean, I had all the faith in the world. It's a gift that God's given me, a strong faith. But with Abram, when I was starting to pray over that, I got that same conviction. So here we are a couple years later, and I felt so strong, so sure this time, because, God always confirms things that he wants you to do. I always say he taps you on the shoulder a couple times, then he slaps you in the face. Well, this was my second tap on the shoulder. And again, I approached Aaron, and at this point he was like, I know you feel this because we talk about it a lot. But he was like, Mandy, I just think if it was truly something you were supposed to do, that he would put it on my heart, and that is so true. I know Jesus would never tear a family apart, and he is a spiritual leader of our household. And so I just prayed, like, Lord, when it's time, let him feel it stronger than me. And I just waited. And that waiting period was frustrating, like many waiting periods are. But I was so sure that one day I was going to be able to work in special needs education. So
you were hopeful that you were going to get to leave pharmacology to do special needs education.
Yes, very hopeful. And there were a few things that didn't make sense, like the education that I'd put into it. So the time, it was a very successful career. And so to leave by the time I left, I was in management, and I had left the school. I taught for 10 years, and I was in the pharmacy management position for a couple of years. But probably the third time, I don't even remember how many years. It was probably 3 years ago now. So 6 years into this conviction that I'm supposed to leave into special needs education, I approached my husband. We were on our, excuse me. We were on our yearly marriage retreat, so we always escape.
That's special.
It is. I would recommend it to everyone. Everybody needs a little moment just to set goals. So we're setting our goals for the year, and this was before, I think this was in 2020, before it got crazy with COVID. So we were setting our goals for the year. And I told him, personal goals, and we were discussing personal and family and spiritual. And I was like, personally, I still think and what I thought it was, Corey, was I really want to go to Evangel and help them expand this program so that more children could be reached, because it has been life-changing for us. So by now I've realized, like, my kids are getting everything they need. I knew they were on the journey that they needed to be on. They're getting Jesus every day. They're successful academically, and we're making progress, and I'm happy. And I wanted every child that needs help to be able to have this. So for 2 years, I'm jumping around, and I apologize, but I had changed my schedule when I went into pharmacy management to have Fridays off, and so I would be able to volunteer at Evangel every Friday.
Oh, wow.
And so that was my schedule, and I loved my Fridays, and I would help them write policy, and I would help them just wherever they needed me. Sometimes I was at the high school, sometimes I was at the elementary, sometimes I was at the preschool, so I just did wherever they needed me. I just wanted to be there.
So how did you do that, though? Because, I mean, were you researching, like, how to write policy for, like, a special needs program, as well as what you were doing, like, for your career?
Well, I was just lucky to have some great mentors, and they just needed some help to rewrite policy or to proofread or to make things more concise. So I was just kind of a worker bee, and I was under my spiritual mentor was the director of Evangel Learning Center. Her name is Carmen Bradford, and she is still the director of Evangel Learning Center, so the littles. And then Dr. Kimberly Ray was who I was going to volunteer for, who was over the foundations every week. So I had both of these ladies kind of working with me, pouring into me. I was learning a ton, but really I just wanted to help and be a part of it. So during that 2 years, I learned a lot. I helped a lot. And Dr. Ray and I started talking about eventually working together. And so that was the plan.
Yeah.
And then when I was on that marriage retreat that I was telling you about, I told Aaron, I really think I still think I would love to work in special needs. I think it's a calling. And he said, okay, Mandy, give me 1 year. Because he could see it. I'm not giving up. I was waiting. I still feel this is the Lord. And so he was like, give me 1 year. And so I went into work the next day and gave my year notice.
Whoa.
That was a little bold.
Did Aaron know that?
He didn't know that until I got home that night.
Oh, nice.
And so I told him, I got home and I was like, honey, I gave my year notice. And he was like, what? I said we would talk about this in a year. And I was like, I was like, but you said a year. And I gave a year and my boss was okay with it.
Like, this is me committing to the goal. That's all it is.
Yes. Hindsight, I probably could have been a little clearer before I went into work and did that. But I was totally committed.
Oh, sorry.
You okay?
I think we'll have to cut that part out.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll start back with saying hindsight.
Okay. Take a moment.
Right.
I'll take a swig too.
It's the hard part. Is just like comes in waves.
And if you cough over each other's speech, try to wait or repeat that part.
Okay.
We're good. I mean, we're good for now.
Gosh, it's so frustrating because like that was a great point where it's like he just finds out that you gave your year's notice.
Yeah. That's what made you cough. Could you imagine your wife doing that?
Yes, I could. It was very I don't know, there's a lot of this stuff that's very similar to stuff that Casey and I went through. So
Really?
I love it. And just knowing who Aaron is and like how
Yes.
there's a plan, we're gonna follow this plan, and
I rock it.
that's it.
Every time. Yeah.
Okay, wait, we're not starting back yet. All right.
No.
Okay. Ready?
Yes.
Okay, wait.
Okay.
Hang on. So you're going to say hindsight.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So hindsight, I probably could have made that a little clearer before I went into work, but it all worked out. So
You're still married?
that's right.
Yeah.
Happily.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's exciting.
Yes. You just added some spice to the marriage, that's
There
all.
you go. There you go. And some good discussions. So here's where the Lord started even we call it a master chess game because we knew that to do this, I was going to have to take a large pay cut. And it was over a 50% pay cut, approaching 75%.
Oh,
And so Aaron, that was being the provider and trying to think things through. That's his job to make sure we're secure and take care of us. Of course, he was a little bit worried about that. And so we put our house on the market. We thought it was our forever house, but it was a commitment that I just knew it was of the Lord. And I just knew so we put our house on the market and it never sold. And it was a time where like, how is it sold? And we were kind of wondering, and it made me wonder, like, maybe this wasn't the right thing.
Because this was during 2020, whenever everybody's house was selling for like 20% more than it should have.
But mine, yes. And so
It's a blessing in the most unkind way.
I know, right? and every once in a while, I knew he had to be thinking like, see, Mandy? I knew he had to be thinking like, are you sure about this? Until First Beginnings started changing directorship. Miss Charlotte Rogers was the director of First Beginnings for 30 years before me, but she wanted to be a grandmother and to retire and to love on her grandbabies. And so she gave a notice and that she was going to retire, and they could not find a director to fill First Beginnings. And Aaron happened to be in on those conversations, I think, as maybe he was chair of the trustees or on the trustees at that time. And he would come home and tell me about how they can't find a director at First Beginnings. And, excuse me. And I never, in my head, I was not here at all. I mean, this was my church. I love this church. I wanted to, but he would come home and he was like, "Don't you think this is funny?" And I was like, "I guess," like not putting myself in these shoes at all.
Yeah.
And so, in the meantime, I'm working with Dr. Kimberly Ray. We're trying to figure out the niche. How do we make this program grow? And we set up a meeting with myself, Dr. Kim Ray, and Bubba Manning. Now, he is the father of the very first student that ever attended Evangel Foundations, and Aaron and myself. And we were talking about the position that I was going to have at Evangel the following year. But before, I think it was the night before this dinner, I got a call from Jay Sawyer.
Uh-oh.
And Jay Sawyer said, "Hey, Mandy, we found our director for First Beginnings." So somebody had accepted the director position. "Do you know anybody? We'd love a church member that might be interested in being the assistant director of First Beginnings." And I was like, Jay. And now my husband has come home talking about this directorship a couple times. So I knew the story. We were looking for somebody, couldn't find anybody. And I told him, "Oh, Aaron, I hope they find somebody because I really envision our church having a foundations program one day." And he was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." Still thinking like,
Somebody
yeah,
else.
that'd be great, Mandy. Exactly. But still, I'm not there at all. So when Jay calls me, I kind of thought Aaron had put him up to it. And so I answered the phone, and we're talking, and I said, "Jay, I don't know anybody, but let me think about it." And I said, "But let me tell you how happy I am that y'all found a director and that First Beginnings is staying open, because I just know one day we're going to have a foundations program just like Evangel, and we'll be able to serve, special needs children or just children that are out-of-the-box learners. And I just know that our church would be so good at that." And he kind of jokingly said, "Well, you're hired." And I said, "Oh," I'm kind of laughing about it. And I was like, "Oh, no, I actually am going to dinner tomorrow with Evangel. I'm going to start working there next year." And so I go to dinner. We're at Cantina Laredo, sitting there having a quiet conversation. And before we start in, I just said, "Hey, guys, I just want you to know, in case you hear anything from anybody else, my church did call me. They're looking for an assistant director." And I said, "And I had a funny conversation, but I want you to know, like, my heart's always been here. My children are here. I want this program, what y'all are doing." And I always think their program works really well because they pray over it and Jesus comes first. And I love the model. I mean, it works. I see miracles. I saw it in my children. I see miracles in other children. And so I said, "I'm here with you. I want to grow your program." And then I see the gentleman, Mr. Manning, kind of getting teary-eyed. And I looked over, and he's not typically an emotional guy. He's very even-keeled. And he looked at me and he said, "Mandy, you need to take the position." And I was like,
Whoa.
"What?" And Aaron kind of was like, "I've been telling her this." And Dr. Ray and I are a little bit stunned because we had been kind of planning, what it looked like for us to work together. And
Dr. Ray was working with, or is working with.
She is at Evangel. She's the head over that program. And so she was working kind of with Bubba Manning. Like, he's not in the program, but he was an accountant for the program. And so they worked closely together. And so when Bubba Manning told me, like, you need to take this position. He was like, I think this is a jumping off point. This is a way that we can grow the same program. It would expand the opportunities in Shreveport for children. And so after that dinner, I just said, okay, well, I guess I'll walk out of the restaurant and call Jay Sawyer back.
I cannot imagine. So you think the Lord put it on his heart, like in that moment, to change his mind from what y'all were initially thinking about to say that
Right.
First Methodist needed you more?
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
something. And I mean, I respected him so much. I mean, he went out and found this program and formed this program for his child, and his heart has been in it the whole time, and he's always given back to the community. And of course, I respected Aaron and knew that I knew that he would be cautious and obedient to the Lord's calling. And so with both of them telling me this, I was kind of like, okay, this is it. And so I walked outside in the parking lot. I called Jay and I was like, I'll take the assistant director position. But I do have this vision. And he was like, great. We need vision. You're connected to the church. This is great. And then the next day happened. And the person that took the director position for First Beginnings decided not to take the director position for First Beginnings. And so we were without a director again. The program again was waffling whether to stay open or to close down First Beginnings, just because there was no leadership. I was unqualified, or at least I thought I was.
I was about to say, I feel like you're somewhat qualified.
I mean, teaching or being a professor in a college is not the same thing as early childhood education. And to be a director, you have to have a year of experience working in early childhood education. But Jesus knew this. And so that's why he had made me volunteer the last 2 years of my Fridays. So that made me qualified to be a director.
Wow.
I know. Isn't it crazy? And
Yes.
so I remember distinctly having a conversation with Mr. Sawyer. And he was like, Mandy, before I'd put this all together, he was like, I guess it's just not meant to be. I guess we're not going to be able to keep First Beginnings open. And I said, I just hate that it was just that quick. Like one decision, one director decided not to, and I'm still praying, and I was like, if I could do it, I would, but I don't think I'm qualified. And then I called Miss Carmen, my spiritual mentor, who was the director at Evangel Learning Center, and she was like, no, you can do this. You just need a letter. I'll write about your volunteer work, and that qualifies you. And so another conversation with Mr. Sawyer, it's back on. Miss Charlotte Rogers said, I'll stay on and help train you. I'll give you what you need to know to make you a director. So here I go. I go from like Evangel to assistant director to director in a matter of a week.
Wow. Goodness.
It was a quick change.
How are you feeling throughout the whole thing?
Excited.
Yeah?
I'm okay with change. That's a little even quick or fast for me. But I was very excited. And remember, I've been waiting 6 years for this move. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but it never is. It's always, if it's the Lord, it's so much better than what I think it's going to be.
Yeah.
And then let me just throw in what happened with the house. We took it off the market after I took this position. We had already kind of worked out, this is the income the family needs to work with. We've got a budget. We can make this work. And then after I made the commitment, Aaron was 100% on board. So it was exactly what I prayed for, to be clear. He's 100% on board. And then something in his business shifts, and what I lost, his business made up for in a matter of 2 weeks. So it was almost like, y'all take this step of faith. You can't outgive me. I'm going to, and thank goodness our house didn't sell, because we loved the house. We wanted to stay in the house. So
did y'all build it, or
no?
Okay.
It's on Cross Lake. I love the water, and I just looked for 2 years. It's got a little bit of land. It's just an escape.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so we ended up being able to keep the house. His business picked up where mine kind of went down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was faith building for both of us, but even for Aaron. It was kind of like we took a step out in faith and obedience, and it was immediately covered.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
It's good.
Because, I mean, there's so many parallels to feel like how my wife and I aren't nearly on the same, we're on the same trajectory as you at all, but there are those moments where the Lord rewards faithfulness. And it's tough because as husbands, like you said, Aaron, it was very regimented. There is a plan. We're going to stick to the plan. This is what we're doing. And that's cool that you had some prayer time, but this is the plan. And I was the same way with a lot of stuff that, or I say a lot of stuff, some of the things that my wife and I went through. And it was in those times where we give up what our plan is and we acknowledge that, the Spirit's moving and there needs to be a willingness, and then that willingness to step out in faith, even though it's uncertain and you're giving up things that you're comfortable with and things that you wanted for yourself that you've achieved and you feel like this is what you're meant to have, and then you're giving it up to then do something else. That act of faithfulness is just, it's always so good. And even if you had sold the home, I'm sure you'd be just as happy as you are now.
Exactly. Yes.
But it's always so good whenever the Lord rewards faithfulness like that.
Yes. It's faith building, and it's such a beautiful testimony. I'm so sure the Lord's hand was in it, and Aaron's so sure the Lord's hand was in it, and it just makes it that much more special.
Absolutely. And for 6 years, like that is
Yes.
an impressive amount of time. I feel like that's what we don't talk about a lot is the fact that the Lord put something on our heart, but it's not a right now thing.
Yeah.
That you're praying for something and you know that you're in a career and you know that this career isn't it and you're still in it and you're just waiting on the Lord to move to take you out from it. And it has to be in a way that can only be explained by the Holy Spirit moving you out. And so
Yes. And
I love it.
And it was even a challenge for my inner circle of friends, like your Jesus friends, the people you share everything with. And they knew how committed I was to the vision and how much I felt like I wanted to be working in this new education. And so every once in a while they would be like, oh man, can't Aaron see? Can't you? And so that was a challenge for me too, but I was just so sure, biblically, Aaron is the spiritual leader of the household. And I was just, when he made the point, like, God's going to put it on my heart too. And I knew that was right. And so I just held on to that fact. Like, he will put something on your heart. I totally agree, because he would never do something to break up this unity.
Yeah.
And I had faith in that, and it happened. And that, my waiting and trying, I'm not patting myself on the back, because there were times when I was mad at Aaron that he wasn't on board, and I would just pray through it and realize, like, this is right. This is the right thing to do. I know it's God's timing, but it was hard. But the waiting actually spoke into some of the faith of my friends too, because
That's
it was
awesome.
frustrated for them. They wanted to see the end point, but after it, they were like, the timing was perfect. What if you would have left 4 years earlier? You might not be at your home church starting up this program. It would have looked different. It wouldn't have been as good. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
had a great ending.
There's no telling how it could have gone potentially wrong if you'd have jumped ship on your own.
Right. Right.
So,
And it definitely
so
would
good.
have. Things I try to take charge of usually go wrong.
That's right. That's what I love. We're doing a read through the Bible this year with, I don't know if many people know this. This might be me outing myself, but I'm actually a member at Broadmoor Baptist, and we're doing a read through the Bible this year. And we got to the few parts in the Old Testament where it talks about the Israelites doing things without consulting without consulting God before they do it. And even though they have like the big army that is, way more capable than the other army, they move without the Lord's command, and they're defeated every time.
Yep.
But even whenever I forget what the exact story was, but he whittles them down to essentially like 300 or 400 people, and they defeat an army of 2,000 because he was in it. And so I just love that always is the case with our spiritual journey, that we're not called to move on our own, even though we think we can do it and we know that we're capable. We're called to wait on how the Lord calls us to move. Right. And your faithfulness in that is so admirable. So thank you for being patient and waiting on the Lord, Mandy, because then we wouldn't have gotten to know you.
Oh man, I don't think I can be. Don't thank me for my patience. I think I learned some patience through there. But gosh, the waiting, I probably wasn't that was hard for me. I probably wasn't my happy, joyful self all the time. Yeah. I wish I could have been, but I'm working on that.
We get to see your happy, joyful self here, so
yes,
we're glad for it.
Yes.
And so now that you're here, you've been here for, 3, 4 years?
I finished my second year. I'm in my third year right now.
Nice.
We have a foundations program. We built the room out of the old office in the first year. We're keeping it small for now, but it's going great. Yeah. And it's still the families that are here, I think, see the fruit of the teachers pouring into them and praying over them. We do have Bible every day and prayer every day. That was important to me, for even in our infant classes. Yeah. Let's see, what else is, this year we've started racial reconciliation talks in First Beginnings. Another thing that's been on my heart, and really Aaron has had it on his heart for years and years and years, is just the unification of Black and White Shreveport. And when I walked into First Beginnings, I really did not realize that we had the majority of the staff there is African American. I had no idea. But the day that I walked in, I was like, oh, this is all part of the same story. This calling can start right here. Yeah. And we're actually having our third kind of racial reconciliation community talk tomorrow, Wednesday. And the first two have been beautiful. And the first one, it was about 8 people. And then the next one, it was about 16 people. And I'm expecting even more. And people are just so open and so hopeful. And I think it had to wait until this point to start because I had to earn the trust of my employees, and the same. They had to earn my trust, and we know that we love each other, and we know that there's progress to be made in Shreveport, and we're very open in saying it can start with us. Why not? It has to start in the church. It can start with us. It can spread to the city, and with Jesus, we can, better unify the world. And so we have lofty goals, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can make it happen in a year. You can just go ahead and give everybody the year's notice right now. This is going to change.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, man, that would be awesome.
And so is that open to everyone in the community, the racial reconciliation, or is that just through First Beginnings?
I'm just prayerful obedience right now. I'm just wanting to have the conversation start. And so the first one was just my small group from the church and an open invitation to all the staff. Okay. The second one was staff, if you want to bring your family and friends. And we still had, it was just my small group, but tomorrow's will be a few more people from the church, some of my personal friends, a few more people from the staff. Eventually, yes, we would like to make it open to the city, anybody that wants to join in. But I think the small conversations are where the fruit is happening. It's just sitting down and having conversations that you just might not have had because there's not a setting for it. We hope I wish the healing of many years past I wish it would have started much earlier, but there's some things that never go unsaid because we're just uncomfortable broaching certain subjects with opposite races. And it's been a safe place, and it's been real conversations, and nobody's surface talking, but it's so intentional and it's so beautiful. And I won't say any names, but there are pastors that have come and shared past hurts, and they just, and they're staff members that come and share past hurts, and it's just starting the healing process. And I think we're all here for it, and we're all ready for it.
Good. That's awesome, Mandy.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Oh.
And so the Foundations program, what is that?
So the Foundations program is an educational program for any child with any kind of special learning need or developmental disability. And it's basically using principles of behavior analysis. It's just trial and error to find processes that work for whatever typical or whatever child's needs are. So our staff to child ratio is often 1-to-1 or 1-to-2.
Okay.
While we're training some specific skills or tools. And then what we'll do is bring in a few children from the typical classroom and just practice those skills. And then eventually the goal is for the child that's learning these skills to go and join in a typical classroom.
Yeah.
And so stage 1 is kind of teaching the skills one-on-one. Stage 2 is bringing a small group into practice. And stage 3 is including the child in a larger typical classroom.
Wow.
And it's a very individualized process, but I think that education should be individualized.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it should be that way for all children.
Especially with those kids who have those needs, just because I'm assuming it's like autism or like the autism spectrum that people fall on.
Yes.
Where there might be, I don't know, they just have the sensory, things that trigger a certain outburst. And so are y'all mainly teaching how to manage that, or?
Some of it's behavior.
Okay.
Some of it's behavioral. Some of it's communication. Some of it's just a connection. So, we're built for relationships. So anything that's how the Lord built us. So anything that gets in the way, if it's a behavior that gets in the way of a productive relationship, then we want to scale those down.
Yeah.
And if it's communication limitations, then we want to build that up just so we can be in relationship and make disciples.
And can you, explain how the Foundations program worked for your kids?
I can.
Okay.
By the time Asher, my oldest, got into the Foundations program, he had already developed a dislike for school. Just because he wasn't equipped. I don't know what the word is in a 3-year-old's brain. Maybe he was embarrassed, or maybe he just knew that he couldn't perform how he needed to, like the other children. And so he'd just do anything to escape. So when we went to Evangel, they set up a playroom. And taught him skills necessary, like play skills. He wasn't even really sure how to play. Parallel play and then interactive play with others are skills.
Yeah.
And so they basically set up like a playroom of his favorite things, and they would shape his behaviors. He did not have a lot of communication skills. So he would point and as a mom, you know what your child wants. But again, if he couldn't go into a room of strangers and convey what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
So without me walking around saying like, oh, he means this, he wouldn't have been successful. So what they did is train him largely in communication and got him to retrain his brain that he really did like to be there. And a lot of what they do uses reinforcement. So if he attempts a word approximation like ball, or his brother's name was Abram, but he didn't have very many sounds, so he used to say Aye for his brother's name, but just that he would try to use a word, we would reinforce him. Like he would get to maybe have one of his favorite treats, not every time, or play with his favorite toy, or get to do something that he enjoyed every time that he would use his verbal communication skills. And eventually the use of verbal communication and getting what he wants becomes the reinforcer. So you can scale back the tangible reinforcers, and the actual communication and success becomes the reinforcer. So that's an elementary way to put it, but you do that with every skill needed. So you reinforce the behaviors up, and then you either punish it's a word. It punish the behaviors down, but it's not really like an act of
Yeah.
punishment.
Yeah.
But you just decrease the behaviors that you need, like
Negative reinforcement or something.
yeah, or
Or
yes.
not like, obviously not abuse or anything, or not like a physical thing, but
Yeah, encourage the behaviors you want, discourage the behaviors that
Yeah.
you don't want. So if Asher like had the tantrums, so we would have to, during a tantrum, we just wouldn't address him at all, and he would have to calm down before he would get any kind of reinforcer. So that it takes some hard work. Families that have the challenge of tantrums or many developmental disabilities that result in communication barriers, that's so frustrating for a child. So it often leads to tantrums, and the dealing with tantrums. We used a timeout procedure, and timeout for like in first beginnings. It looks like the age of the child, a 2-year-old, if they hit another child, they would go and have quiet time for 2 minutes and be separated. For Asher, we would have to wait until he settled down. So the first time out might have taken an hour. But there's enough research behind this to say the second time it will take 45 minutes. The third time it will take 30. So it was a grueling process for a mom, because you would watch your baby cry, but you knew this is tough love.
Yeah.
Because you knew that eventually, like now, if I said, Ash, go to timeout, he immediately calms down, and then we can have but that took many years to get to. It was a skill, a calming skill that he had to develop, but now he's able to engage in meaningful conversation without tantrums because we worked on that at an early stage.
that is so interesting, because I don't want to say or ask like if they're normal now, but it's like you've taken someone who is at like a disadvantage and had a deficit in certain areas, and you've raised them up to where everything is fully functioning now.
Yes.
And so like, does he still have those struggles?
I would say,
Like, is it always going to be there, or is it just to a point where now he's kind of like on the same ascent as other kids his age?
I think we're still catching up academically, but I have no doubt that he will be caught up by the time he's supposed to graduate.
Yeah.
And there's just some difference. Like you would notice, most children have a manipulative side just because, like I do too, we're born with it. But I think it's a blessing. They're just so straightforward and black and white and rule governed. And if Asher tells you something, he's not manipulating you. This is, I mean, there's a purity, because you just know he's always telling the truth. So I think there's so many blessings. It's hard to compare to other children, because I have 2 on the spectrum, and then and my daughter's typical. And I even think she gets blessed by seeing how pure her brother. I mean, because she's got more manipulation in her, and I always pray that her will lines up with the Lord's. Everybody pray that with me. But I think she's been blessed by she can communicate with anybody now, because she watched them go through what and we use some of the same behavior techniques with her. She's done the timeout thing just like they did, and it makes everybody on an equal playing field at my house. And it's just consistency. The consistency can be hard. Like when grandma came over, my poor mama, they just want to be a grandma and give them all the things and coddle. But when you're trying to shape these behaviors down, you can't give in, because if he knows that he can raise up, like get really, really upset and Granny's going to give in, then he's going to raise up to that level every time. So everybody has to be in on it.
Yes.
And it is a tough process, but it's so worth it. So worth it if you can hang in there.
I love it. And so with people who are on the spectrum that are like maybe 20s or 30s that have those maybe deficits of like speech or like sensory overload and things like that, do you think it could have been like mitigated if it was addressed earlier and they were given the coping skills like as a child? Would it have, like, is there a difference, like would it make a difference for someone like as they got older, or is like someone who maybe is high functioning with autism, but they could be maybe unnoticeable as an autistic person, someone who has autism, what they had been showing as a kid had been addressed?
I think that there's so many benefits that have been proven to early intervention. So I hate to say yes, it could have been, because I don't know what they have put into, and what kind of therapies and strategies they've used. But we do know that early intervention has been shown to really to have great improvements in autism and related disorders. So probably would be my answer. Or it would have probably been an easier road if they would have had the tools that are available now.
Yeah. Well, we're thankful for you, because that means that you're going to be able to catch those kids earlier on.
I love that. I love that the church is able to, you know, and we're not everybody's answer, but we're somebody's answer. And I love that there's more and more opportunities opening throughout the city. I just love that. Holy Angels opened a program. Evangel's still going strong. I know that other private schools are looking to integrate special needs education, and I think the more the merrier, because families need options. When I was looking for options, again, I just praised the Lord that we got in at Evangel, but there weren't very many at all. And so door after door was shut in my face, and that rejection of your child is so painful. But I know now it was the exact path the Lord wanted me on. But man, to hear somebody say, like, I can't help your child, ooh, that's hurt, and it's a hopeless situation. But there's I'm here to tell you there's hope, though. If you have a child that has a developmental disability, just keep going. There's so many things out there right now. Be their advocate and bring it to the Lord, because he's got you, and there is a purpose in there. And then I have no doubt that my children will be able to reach back and lift people up that are going through similar challenges. I'll already bring them to my foundations class. And I'll ask Asher, and I ask Asher and Abram, like, do y'all, and because it's especially the timeout portion or the discipline portions are hard. And so I'll say, Ash, do you remember having to sit in timeout? And I'm so thankful. He's like, no, I don't he doesn't remember that, but he knows now. Like, he came home, friends were hard for Asher more than Abram. Abram is happy in his own little world most of the time, and people like to be around him. But Asher overthinks or thinks a lot and analyzes every relationship. So just last week he came home and he was like, "It's the best day ever, Mom." He was like, "I made new friends," and it just means so much to him. And I know that he'll continue. The more he grows, the more he'll continue to make like true friendships. And when he gets a friend, he's loyal to the core. So there'll be true friendships. But the successes that I'm seeing now, just from the work that he's put in, it's just wonderful. And I just hope that he gives, and I know that he gives some people hope, but I hope that he can give more people hope. Yeah,
I love it. And so what's the dream for the future of First Beginnings in the Foundations program?
Let's see.
Listen up, Jay.
So the dream is, if there is a need for, we opened a kindergarten because I wanted a peer group for my 3 to 5 year olds that need an inclusion group. And so right now we are 8 weeks to kindergarten, but if there is a need for a K through 12, then I think the Lord will provide a way for us to have a K through 12. Another just Christian school, and meeting the needs of, I love small classes. I love small staff to child ratios. I think every child benefits from just having a little more attention on them. So I would love, as long as there's a need to grow and to expand to different grades, I think the Lord will make a way. Right now we're out of space, and so that prevents us growing to more grades. But in God's timing, Corey, we'll see what unfolds, and I just hope to be able to meet the needs for the Shreveport community.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you for what you do, Mandy.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you for letting me tell my story.
Absolutely. I've loved it. All right, guys. We will see y'all next time.